operations on functions. And we're given two functions here. F of x is equal to 3x squared plus 7x, and g of x is equal to 2x squared minus x minus 1. And what this means is f plus g of x. And whenever you have f plus g of x, what that means is you're going to take f of x and add it with g of x. Combine your like terms and you're done. So f minus g of x is equal to f of x minus g of x. Okay? So this is f plus g of x. I'm going to have f of x plus g of x. So f of x is equal to 3x squared plus 7x plus g of x is 2x squared minus x minus 1. And I'm going to try not to go into the next problem. So now it's just combining like terms. 3x squared plus 2x squared becomes 5x squared. 7x minus x is positive 6x. Let me make that a little nicer. Plus 6x, and my only constant is 1, so minus 1. And that is f plus g of x. There you go. So the next one is going to be f of x minus g of x. And we've done this before, basically. You're subtracting the expressions. So 3x squared plus 7x, but you're subtracting this whole g of x, 2x squared minus x minus 1. So that negative needs to be distributed into that. I get 3x squared plus 7x minus 2x squared plus x plus 1. And now I combine my like terms. 3x squared minus 2x is 1x squared, positive 1x squared. 7x plus x is going to be 8x. And now I have a positive 1. So this is f minus g of x. And the last one, if I do g plus f of x, it's going to be the same thing because they're adding. But g minus f would be different. So if I'm looking at g minus f, that's going to be 2x squared minus x minus 1. And then I'm subtracting this f of x function, 3x squared plus 7x. So I have 2x squared minus x minus 1, and then distribute that negative, minus 3x squared minus 7x, and combine your like terms. So this becomes negative x squared minus 8x and minus 1. And that's it for adding and subtracting. So for multiplying and dividing, it's the same concept. F times g of x is going to equal f of x times g of x. So you multiply the two together, and f divided by g of x is going to equal f of x divided by g of x. And you just write those two that same way. So for this one, I'm going to have the f of x function multiplied with the g of x function, which is going to be 3x squared minus 2x plus 1 multiplied with x minus 4. And so when I distribute, let me distribute the 3x squared. That's going to become 3x to the third minus 12x squared when I multiply it with the negative 4. And then I'm going to distribute the negative 2x, and that's going to become negative 2x squared, positive 8x. And now I'm distributing the 1, and that becomes positive x minus 4. And I moved it over a little bit so I didn't run into that next example. And now I combine my like terms. These two are alike. These two are alike. So I get 3x cubed minus 14x squared plus 9x minus 4. And when I'm dividing, it's just going to be 3x squared minus 2x plus 1 divided by x minus 4. You do need to pay attention to restrictions here, though. And because you got to find any restrictions on x. Is there anything x cannot be? Well, this denominator is not allowed to be 0. So if there's any x value that's going to make that 0, you have to state that restriction. So x minus 4 cannot equal 0, and if I add 4 to both sides, that means x is not allowed to equal 4, because if I plug 4 in here, that's going to be 4 minus 4 is 0, and that's not allowed. So that's a restriction to this expression, x cannot equal 4. Okay, so this is to compose functions or composition of functions is when you're doing f of g of x. And this can be written two different ways. This O means f of g, and it can also be written like this. These two things mean the same thing. It's the same directions. And this would be g of f of x. They mean the same thing. So I'm going to find both, and for this one I'm going to find f of g of x and g of f of x. So when I'm doing f of g, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug the g function into the f function. Just like if it was f of 2, I would plug 2 into the f function. Well, here I'm plugging g of x, so it's going to be 3 times g of x squared minus g of x plus 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put the g of x function in there. So it's 3 times 2x minus 1 squared. All I did is I replaced this x with g of x, 2x minus 1. Minus 2x minus 1 plus 4. And so I have to follow my order of operations, and I'm going to square this 2x minus 1 first, and this is the part that may take a little long time. This is the part that may take a little while because I need to multiply it by itself. So it's going to be 4x squared, and then I get negative 2x. Negative 2x is going to combine to be negative 4x, and negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Notice I've kept this g of x function in this parentheses because this negative needs to be distributed into it. So when I go ahead and distribute the 3, I'm distributing that into this quadratic. That's going to be 12x squared minus 12x plus 3. And then I'm distributing that negative minus 2x plus 1 plus 4. And at this point, I'm going to combine my like terms, and I get 12x squared is by itself. Negative 12x, negative 2x becomes negative 14x. And then I have positive 3, positive 1, positive 4, and that becomes positive 8. So f of g is equal to 12x squared minus 14x plus 8. So I'm also going to find g of f of x, and what that is I'm now plugging the f function into the g function. And I'm not going to write it like this. this time, all I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this x in the g function, and I'm plugging in this whole f function here. So it's going to be 2 times, give myself a little bit more room, 3x squared minus x plus 4, and then minus 1 on the end. Don't forget that part comes from here. So distribute the 2, 6x squared minus 2x plus 8 minus 1. Combine your like terms, I get 6x squared minus 2x plus 7. And that's it. It can also, again, be written this way. And so here I'm given two functions, f of x and g of x, and I want to find f of g of 4. And it's a little bit different, and there's two methods to do this. I'm going to show you both ways. The first way is you're first going to find f of g of x. Okay, so when I find f of g of x, what I'm doing is I'm plugging the g into the f. I'm replacing this x with g. Well, g is x minus 6, so I have x minus 6 squared and then plus 2. All I did was I plugged g into x in the f function. And so now I square that. I'm going to square that, which means I need to multiply it by itself. So I have x squared, then a negative 6x, and negative 6x is going to be combined to be negative 12x. They don't cancel out. And then negative times negative is positive 36. And then there's that plus 2 on the end. So f of g of x is equal to x squared minus 12x plus 38. Well, in this case, I want f of g of 4. So now I can go ahead and plug in 4 for x, and I get 4 squared minus 12 times 4 plus 38. 16 minus 48 plus 38. Negative 32 plus 38. F of g of 4 is equal to positive 6. The second method is, because this means the same thing as f of g of x, like this, in this case, it's going to mean the same thing as f of g of 4. So what I can do is find g of 4. So plug 4 in the g function. G of 4 is going to be 4 minus 6. And so g of 4 is equal to negative 2. And then what I can do to find f of g of 4, well, g of 4 is negative 2, so that's going to be the same as f of negative 2. And so when I plug negative 2 into the f function, negative 2 squared plus 2, negative 2 squared becomes 4, plus 2 is 6. So f of g of x, of 4 is equal to 6. And notice I got the same answer. It doesn't matter the way that you do it. You can get the same answer either way. So try these two U-tries. And this one is g of f of x. This one is f of g of negative 3. I'll give the answers in 5 seconds. Pause it. So here are the U-try answers. The first one, you have to square. You're plugging in 2x minus 3, so you get 2x minus 3 squared. And when I square that, you multiply it by itself, and you should get this quadratic. And then just combine all your like terms, and you end up with 4x squared minus 10x minus 2. And this next one, I did both ways. This is method 1, and then this one was method 2. So I found f of g of x first, and that should be 2x squared plus 2x minus 19. And then plug in negative 3, and you end up with negative 7. For this one, find g of negative 3, which should have been negative 2. Plug that into the f function, and you get negative 4 minus 3, which is negative 7. Still the same answer. Okay, got a good one here. What's the Man of Steel's household chore? Supper, man. Get it? Supper. Man of Steel. The Man of Steel is Superman.